the gift that feels like a trap. Not all affection feels safe. Not all warmth feels welcoming. Not all love lands as intended. For the avoidant, the moment someone draws closer, the moment kindness becomes consistent, the moment care becomes visible, something inside them shifts. Not toward joy, not toward relief, but toward tension. It's not because they don't appreciate it. It's not because they don't want it. And it's definitely not because they don't feel anything for you. It's because affection has a weight. And for someone who's spent years learning how to survive with less, that weight can feel almost unbearable. Here's what most people don't see. When you give them love, you're not just giving them now. You're giving them every moment of love they ever didn't receive. Every drop of warmth they were denied in their past. Every word they wish someone had said, but never did. And instead of feeling healed by it, they often feel confronted. Your affection holds up a mirror. It reflects the gap between what they're receiving now and what they should have received back then. It forces them to acknowledge just how long they've been running on empty. For you, your love is a gift. For them, your love is also a reminder of what was missing, a reminder of what they didn't get to keep, a reminder of how unsafe it once felt to need someone. And here's where it gets complicated. To an avoidant, affection is not just a sign of closeness. It's a sign of dependency forming. And dependency, in their nervous system, equals risk. They've trained themselves to believe, if you don't need anyone, you can't be hurt by anyone. If you don't expect much, you can't lose much. So when someone starts showing up with steady love, their nervous system doesn't say, finally, safety. It says, warning, you're leaning in too far. You're losing control. And control is everything. Not control over you, but control over themselves. Control over their feelings. Control over how close they let you get. Because if they can control the distance, they can control the potential pain. If they can keep a step back, they can keep their heart intact. But affection makes that almost impossible. Think about it. You hug them a little longer than usual. You tell them how much they mean to you without a reason. You notice something small they love and bring it to them. You think you're building trust. But deep inside their chest, they feel their walls being tested. And here's the part most partners never see. The avoidant might smile. They might thank you. They might even respond with affection of their own. But hours later, or even days later, their system will try to correct that closeness. It could be pulling away in conversation. It could be avoiding your messages. It could be suddenly getting busy. Not because they're punishing you, not because they've lost interest, but because they need to restore the level of distance that feels safe to them. This is where the paradox begins. The very thing you give to make them feel loved is the very thing that, to them, starts to feel like pressure. To you, affection is freedom, the freedom to express without fear. To them, affection can feel like a slow tightening, the feeling that expectations are rising. And with them, the risk of disappointment. And the most heartbreaking part, they usually don't even know they're doing it. This isn't a calculated game. This isn't emotional cruelty. It's a nervous system that's been trained to read love and danger in the same breath. It's not that they want to ruin good things. It's that their body learned, long ago, that good things don't last. That good things can turn into abandonment in a moment. That good things require you to let go of your guard. And that's when you're most exposed. So they keep their guard, even with you, even when they love you. And sometimes, especially when they love you. Because for the avoidant, the closer the affection, the higher the stakes. When warmth feels like expectation, affection always carries something invisible. Not just the moment itself, but the meaning that comes with it. For most people, a kind word is just a kind word. A gesture is just a gesture. A long hug is just a way of saying I care. But for the avoidant, affection is rarely neutral. It has weight. It has implications. It has expectations. You bring them soup when they're sick, and without saying a word, their mind is already whispering, "Now I have to be as available for you as you are for me." You offer to help with something small, and their chest tightens as if they've just taken on an unseen contract. You surprise them with something thoughtful, and somewhere deep in their nervous system, an alarm sounds. If they're giving me this much, they'll expect the same from me. It's not that they don't want to give back. It's that giving back to their mind means committing to a level of emotional engagement they might not be able to sustain without feeling cornered. Here's the part that's hard to understand unless you've lived inside that wiring. When they were younger, giving love and receiving love often wasn't free. It came with conditions, strings attached, an unspoken "you owe me." Sometimes that meant performing well enough to keep someone's approval. Sometimes it meant sacrificing their own needs to keep the peace. Sometimes it meant taking on responsibilities way beyond their age just to maintain connection. So now, as adults, the simplest acts of kindness from someone else can activate that same old tension. The feeling that love is a transaction. It's not that they consciously think you're keeping score. It's that their nervous system assumes the score exists because it always has. So your steady affection, your constant presence, your unconditional gestures, they don't land as safe. They land as pressure. Pressure to match you. Pressure to be available. Pressure to open up in ways they might not be ready for. And here's where the spiral begins. The more affection you show, the more they feel the weight of your investment. The more they feel that weight, the more they anticipate expectations rising. And the more they anticipate those expectations, the more they start to retreat. Sometimes it's subtle, taking longer to reply, being less physically affectionate, becoming suddenly busy. Sometimes it's abrupt, picking a fight, creating distance overnight, withdrawing without explanation. Both are just different ways of doing the same thing, lowering the pressure. Because for them, pressure isn't just uncomfortable, it feels unsafe. And when something feels unsafe, their instinct isn't to work through it, it's to get away from it. The irony, of course, is that you may see their withdrawal as proof that you weren't affectionate enough. So you try harder, give more, close the gap, and in their body, all that does is amplify the pressure. This is the avoidant loop, a cycle where love given triggers retreat, and retreat triggers more love given, until both of you are exhausted. And yet, here's the bittersweet truth. They do feel your love. They do appreciate it. They do want it. They just can't receive it without also feeling the shadow of expectation it carries for them. Not because you've placed that expectation there, but because life, long before you, taught them that it's always there. So the warmth you offer becomes, in their mind, a quiet test, and they spend more time bracing for what's coming next than simply letting themselves enjoy the moment you're giving them now. This is why affection, for the avoidant, is so complicated. It's not that they can't stand love. It's that love has never been simple. It has always come with fine print. And until they learn that some love comes with no strings at all, even the purest affection will feel like pressure, the slow build of invisible debt. Love doesn't always show up as flowers and declarations. Sometimes, it shows up as a quiet ledger, not a literal one, not something written down, but an emotional tally of what's been given and what's still owed. For the avoidant, this ledger is not something they choose to keep. It's something their nervous system keeps for them. Every act of care, every sacrifice, every moment someone shows up. It all gets entered automatically into that hidden account. Because they want to count, but because they learned long ago that others will. This is where the feeling of invisible debt begins. You take the time to check on them when they've gone quiet. And instead of simply feeling cared for, they feel the first whisper of weight. They noticed. They're investing. I'll have to match that. You surprise them with something they once mentioned liking, and their mind quietly notes. They remembered. They're paying attention. I'll need to be that attentive too. Even the smallest gestures, a soft touch on the shoulder, a text before bed, go into the account. For most people, this is how love feels natural. For the avoidant, this is how love starts to feel like debt. And the thing about debt is, it grows. Slowly, silently, with interest. At first, the affection feels good. They let themselves relax into it. They might even meet you halfway. But as the weeks and months pass, the quiet ledger fills, and the weight becomes harder to ignore. It's not that they don't want to give back, they do. They want to match you. They want to meet the level of care you've shown. But for the avoidant, the fear is never just about giving back. It's about what giving back might open up. What if they meet your effort, and you expect even more? What if matching you means more vulnerability than they can handle? What if once they repay the love, they're trapped in a constant exchange they can't keep up with? And so, they begin to manage the ledger by managing you. Not in a malicious way, not to manipulate, but to lower the balance, to reduce the sense of debt before it gets too big. This is when you'll see them. Downplay your gestures. Brush off your help. Say, you didn't have to do that more often. Act less interested in receiving affection than they actually are. It's not rejection of the affection itself. It's rejection of the weight it adds to the account. Because once the account feels too full, they start to feel trapped. And when they feel trapped, they reach for the one tool they've always known will give them relief. Distance. Distance, for them, is like making a payment on the debt. It's a way to keep from owing more, a way to slow the accumulation, a way to breathe. But to you, it looks like the opposite of what should be happening. It looks like they're pulling away right when things were going well. That's because you're playing two different games without realizing it. You're building intimacy. They're managing balance. You see love as shared abundance. They see it as a careful exchange that must remain even, or else. And that or else is not imaginary. In their past, when the balance tipped too far in one direction, bad things happened. Resentment built. Withdrawal came. Love was withdrawn until they paid it back. So now, in the present, they guard themselves against that imbalance before it ever happens. This is why even your unconditional love can feel conditional to them, because their body has been trained to believe there's always a price. It's heartbreaking, really. You might be offering something pure, no strings, no ledger, no future demand. But the avoidant has been living with those strings for so long that they can't tell the difference between love and an IOU. And here's the paradox. The more you try to prove you don't keep score, the more they sense the pressure to accept and trust that truth, which feels like another kind of debt. This is the quiet tragedy of the avoidant's love life. Even in the arms of someone safe, they can still feel the phantom weight of every love that came before. So when they turn affection into pressure, it's not because they don't value it. It's because they feel they can't afford it. When safety feels like a trap, to most people, safety feels like freedom. It's the exhale after years of holding your breath. It's the relief of knowing you can let your guard down. But for the avoidant, safety can feel strangely dangerous, not because safety itself is bad, but because safety is the moment they know the fall could hurt the most. when they meet someone who truly cares, when they begin to feel understood, when they realize the person in front of them isn't going to hurt them the way others did. That's when the oldest alarm in their nervous system wakes up. This is when people get comfortable. This is when the walls come down. This is when I lose control. And control, for the avoidant, is not just about who decides what. It's about survival. They learned early, sometimes before they could even put it into words, that the moment they depended too much on someone, the ground beneath them could shift without warning. A parent who was warm one day and cold the next. A caregiver who provided, but always with strings attached. A relationship where kindness came with a timer. So now, when they find themselves with someone who seems steady, their body doesn't relax. It flinches, because deep down, safety feels like the prelude to loss. And the closer they get to you, the more they feel the risk of being trapped in that loss again. Here's the paradox. You think you're creating a home for them. They think they're being invited into a room with a door they might not be able to open again. It's not that they doubt your intentions. It's that they doubt history's mercy. They've been here before, not with you, but with others. And even though you are different, their body still keeps the score of every time safety turned into pain. Which means when you give them more love, more consistency, more devotion, they don't just feel cared for. They feel the invisible rope wrapping around them. And the thing about ropes is, they can either hold you together or bind you. So, without even realizing it, they start looking for the exits. Not because they want to leave, but because they want to know they can. They'll take longer to reply to your texts. They'll create pockets of space where they can breathe without feeling watched. They'll push back when you try to plan too far ahead. It's not rebellion. It's reassurance. Reassurance that they're still free. Reassurance that the door isn't locked. The heartbreaking truth is, the more you make them feel secure, the more their body insists they prepare for the possibility of losing it. It's like handing someone a priceless glass vase. Most people would hold it carefully and cherish it. The avoidant, however, will spend the entire time imagining the sound it would make if it shattered. And so, safety becomes pressure. Love becomes weight. Affection becomes something they must pace themselves with. Not because they don't want it, but because they can only take it in doses that won't drown them. This is why they sometimes seem to sabotage the very thing they long for. It's not self-destruction. It's self-preservation. At least, the kind their nervous system believes in. They're not running from love. They're running from the possibility that love could become a cage. And if they could put it into words, if they felt safe enough to explain, they might say something like, "I need to know that if I stay, it's because I choose to, not because I've forgotten the way out." The tragedy, of course, is that this fear keeps them hovering at the edges of closeness, never fully stepping into the warmth you've built, never fully trusting the safety you offer, even when that safety is real. Why pulling away feels like the only way to stay. Most people pull away when they've lost interest, when the spark is gone, when the connection no longer feels worth the effort. But for the avoidant, pulling away can mean the opposite. It's not a sign they don't care. It's a sign they care too much. And that caring is beginning to feel like a threat to their balance. See, closeness is not neutral for them. It's a heat they have to regulate. Too little, and they fear disconnection. Too much, and they fear suffocation. So, they create a rhythm, a cycle, a quiet, invisible choreography. Move forward when they feel safe. Step back when they feel the walls of intimacy closing in. To the outside world, it might look like indecision. To their partner, it might feel like rejection. But to them, it's survival math. They've learned that the way to keep something from collapsing is to keep from leaning on it too much. And so they measure, they monitor, they keep the emotional thermostat just cool enough to keep from melting. When they start to feel too close, when the days get too intertwined, when they can anticipate your every move, and you theirs, that's when the air gets too thick to breathe. Not because they don't love you, but because love that close, love that consuming, feels like a tide that could pull them under. And they've been under before. They remember what it felt like. They remember how hard it was to come back up. So they pull away, not to leave you, but to save themselves enough space to keep choosing you. It's like they believe every love story has two endings, one where they lose you suddenly, and one where they lose themselves slowly. And they're determined to avoid both. Pulling away becomes the compromise, a way to stay tethered without feeling tied down, a way to love without the terror of disappearing inside the other person. Of course, from the outside, this logic makes no sense. You feel them draw back after a perfect weekend together. You watch them take longer to answer your calls after opening up to you in a way they rarely do. You wonder what you did wrong. But here's the truth. You didn't do anything wrong. If anything, you did something very right. You got close enough to stir the part of them that fears losing control. You made them feel something their body isn't used to holding without flinching. You became important enough for them to start managing the temperature of your connection. So they step back, not to punish you, not to test you, but to cool things down enough that they can stand the heat again. And here's the most ironic part. This stepping back, it's their way of trying to stay longer. Because if they didn't, if they stayed in the heat without pause, their fear would eventually force them to leave completely. To them, space is oxygen. And if they don't get enough, the relationship, no matter how much they care, starts to feel like it's suffocating them. So they ration closeness. They create small absences. They disappear just enough to remind themselves that they're still free, not realizing, of course, that every pullback has a cost. Because while space may help them breathe, it can also make the other person feel unwanted. And too much of it can make even the most patient heart feel cold. The tragedy is that the avoidant often believes this is the only way love can last. That if they didn't pull away, the love would burn too hot and collapse. That if they didn't control the pace, the other person would take more than they could give. But what they don't always see is that the person who loves them would gladly meet them in the middle, if only they knew where that middle was. Because love isn't just about knowing how to come close. It's about knowing how to stay close, without losing yourself in the process. And that, for the avoidant, is the one lesson they spend their whole lives learning. If this spoke to you, if you felt this rhythm of closeness and distance in your own life, share this with someone who needs to understand the heart behind the hesitation. And if you want more, stay here. We'll keep pulling back the curtain, one quiet truth at a time.